don't know how many times I have to say it, so I'm going to say it again. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do nothing else and you never listen to me about anything else ever again, you need to go find thy kingdom come. You need to go buy thy kingdom come, and then you need to watch thy kingdom come. Just look at the detail of this helmet here on the front cover of this only 3-disc. What an outrage. Only 3-disc DVD set. It's called Thy Kingdom Come. Why? Because this is like a biblical box set. It's got 3 discs. One for each of the 3 books of God. Hunter, Hurst, and Helmsley. This is a must for any real wrestling fan. Any pencil neck geek or sit-faced virgin that has ever proclaimed themselves to be an Attitude Era fanboy through and through and wants the Attitude Era back, well, you get a lot of the Attitude Era left, right, and straight down your throat and up your arse with this DVD set. You need to go find it, buy it, and watch it over and over and over again. I told you I was going to review each of the 3 discs, so this is my review of disc number 1, which would be the documentary portion of this DVD. Any gripes that I have now, which are going to be very few, I'm going to get out of the way now. Number 1, it wasn't long enough. I wanted more. Actually, I'm being serious here. I thought it could have been more. They could have talked more about the Clique. They could have talked more about Evolution. They could have talked more about his rivalries with like Stone Cold and went more into that storyline. They could have went more with The Rock and even more into his feud with Mankind. They could have done even more with Taker. You know, all these different things, the dynamics of DX, they gave us a lot, but it felt like I could have had more. Another complaint, not one instance of any behind-the-scenes footage of their wedding night, talking about Paul Levesque and Stephanie. Not one. Outrageous. How are we supposed to fact to that? That is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I could also sit there and say that on the first disc in a lot of these WWE DVDs, they'll have some special features or some behind-the-scenes stuff, and this first disc really didn't have any of that. That was a little bit disappointing to me. This is really supposed to be, in my opinion, like the definitive Triple H collection, at this point anyways, until they release the next one, which I will also be rushing out to buy, and you should too. So with this being the up-to-the-moment definitive piece, you know, this is not like the 2-disc King of Kings set. This is a 3-disc with a full documentary on disc 1. You would have thought you would have gotten a little more behind-the-scenes footage. You would have maybe even seen some of the, you know, full segments from DX and etc. over the years involving Triple H. You really didn't get that. That's one thing that disc 1 was really lacking that probably disappointed me the most, because I felt it was a great documentary piece in terms of the story it told throughout Paul Levesque's entire life from beginning until now, and going through the different phases of his evolution as a sports entertainer and in the professional wrestling industry. I was very disappointed, though, that it didn't have more of those behind-the-scenes stuff and, you know, little funny stories that were extras or, you know, segments or different funny skits. As you know, Triple H has a lot of them over the years, and they were kind of left out on this. That was a little disappointing to me with disc number 1. Now, when I look at this disc and I watched it, one thing that impressed me was the fact that there were no ham and eggers making comments on this. They went with the major leagues. They went with the big boys. They went with Vince. They went with Stephanie. They went with The Rock. They went with John Cena. They went with Randy Orton. They went with Batista. They used Ric Flair footage. I mean, it was the big deal here. They used the big boys, the Big Show. And think about this, too. What made this documentary especially special to me, and I sincerely mean this, was the fact that Undertaker was breaking character and was weaved in and out throughout this entire documentary. That's something you don't get a lot with WWE DVDs. You don't get that a lot with Taker in general. Him making appearances, kind of speaking out of character and, you know, talking. You don't get that a lot. And he was, you know, perhaps the most prevalent person on this DVD, besides a couple of others, such as Stephanie. Now, Taker made more appearances than Vince, who made plenty of appearances, sure. But the one thing I really liked the most about this, and I thought this was a tremendous touch, and of course you had people like Shawn Michaels in there, you had Kevin Nash, you had X-Pac, you had the Road Dogg, you had Billy Gunn. Like I said, all very important people, all people from the past. They did not bring out the ham and eggers for this. The one thing, JR, keep throwing him out there. I really liked how they incorporated his mom and dad. I really did. I felt that humanized Paul Levesque quite a bit. And I like how they were able to talk about his early start in bodybuilding and how he loved professional wrestling from the time he was a kid. Because for so many of us that are wrestling fans now, in my case, for 27, 28 years, whatever the case might be, some of our earliest memories are watching it, whether it be with your mom or dad. In my case, mom, dad, both, really, dad especially, early on, watching the AWA on ESPN or watching the WWF during Hulk Hogan's heyday. I could relate to the story that they were telling about how Triple H got bit by the wrestling bug. He got hooked on the wrestling bug, and he wanted to ultimately make it his career. I love how he told the story about Ted Arcidi and how he got his start in the business. Talking about how Killer Kowalski gave him his name. That's an incredible story. You've heard it before, but it's still funny to hear God himself say it. With all the other sarcasm and all the other crap, this was a really, really good first disc to this DVD set. It was not perfect. There were a couple of things missing. We could have used some promos on here. One thing that Triple H is known for as the president and founder of the Breakfast Club are the promo segments that go as long as he determines they're going to go. Not one full-length promo segment on disc number 1. That is fucking outrageous to me because that's what I was looking for. That's what I wanted. That's what I was demanding. It was outrageous. None of the full-length skits from DX times. None of that stuff. They didn't even mention the third go-around with DX, which I thought was kind of odd. They only alluded to the first or second one. It was like how WWE was trying to pretend before WrestleMania 27 that Triple H and Taker had never wrestled before. It was kind of like they were trying to forget that they had a third incarnation of DX. Didn't show any of that stuff as well. So, there were things omitted and things at times that were presented, I think, a little bit out of whack and didn't always tell the full story. But when you take it from beginning to end, it's a very easy watch. It's a very captivating watch. It does still tell a very, very good story. And like I said, you didn't bring a bunch of bush leaguers on here that nobody gives a crap about to talk about God. You brought all the big timers, the major leaguers, the biggest of the big names are all talking about God. You've got The Rock talking about how it was one of his favorite opponents. He had some of his best matches with him. You've got Kevin Nash talking about how he was the designated driver for him early on in his great business sense. And, all these other guys talking about how great Triple H is. It didn't have a lot of negative tones to it, but you're not going to get that type of stuff from a WWE production, especially when it involves Paul Levesque. You know this. You should expect better. I like how they kind of went behind the scenes too when we're talking about his involvement with WWE NXT and talking about his transition now from the ring to the boardroom and how he's someday going to take over whenever the hell Vince does finally step aside and retire. He's going to be the successor. He's going to be the man in charge. So a lot of good things on this first disc. To me, this first disc alone makes this DVD set worth the buy. Just the first disc alone. Everything else that I'm going to watch on disc number 2, disc number 3 is just icing on the cake. It's just gravy. It's just bonus. It just further validates even more what I've already said, that me only having to pay $15 for this DVD set right here, ladies and gentlemen, is an outrage. I would say it's un-American to partake in this type of felonious stealing, except I would argue that it is even more un-American to not go find this DVD set, go buy this DVD set, and then go watch this DVD set. One of the things I've been looking forward to over the past many years that the WWE has put out. And so far in my watching, it is definitely not disappointed. Not perfect with disc 1. But we still got 2 more discs to go. And by God, you've got a disc 2 review coming. You've got a disc 3 review coming. It's the 3 books of God. Hunter, we've already done now. We're on to the Hearst and the Helmsley. And all I can say is praise God.